Well, thank you, Duane, for that presentation. We'll take some questions from Kelsey.
Hello. So we talked about the gods of man there at the beginning, or Duane did, not we, but yeah, maybe we could talk about that they actually have names like the Callum and Jai, and they the three heads of the Callum god. Could you talk about that, Duane, a little bit?
Oh, okay, yes. Okay, so I gave the basic idea, the generalization, and yes, as we get into this and as people read the books, and we have, many groups, etc., on Facebook and on the internet, I have many titles on lulu.com, and Duane the Great Writer is all over. Yes, these individuals or these gods, and through history, they have had different names. Like the basic ones are Jehovah, the Lord God. That's a good one. That's basically overall. And then you have the saviors, which are looked to as lords or what have you, like Jesus and other individuals, Buddha, Muhammad, what have you. Everybody has their idea of these things. And so, the Callum God, which we refer to, is the Lord God on the mental realm. Basically, the three-headed God, and Paul Twitchell wrote books on this. He called it the two-headed God. I call it the three-headed God because there was a part of this God, which is called the influence, that was not recognized at the time. Now, Paul brought out the benevolent and the evil head, which is the two sides, which man in turn thinks of as devil and the God, and God, but what people don't realize is that it's all the same individual. This devil-God idea was created by the reptilians to confuse people and deceive them, thinking that there's two opposite forces at each other, and this is why the so-called devil idea still exists, even though the idea is that God is all-powerful, and it should be able to handle anything, but yet with what's going on in the world, people see the evilness that's going on, but at the same time, it's like, well, why doesn't God handle this? Because the devil and the God idea, and it's really depicted very well in the movie The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves, and that is that it is the same individual. It's just using different ideas is what it is. So you have this relationship, and fortunately this is only in creation, in cause and effect, not in reality. The all is like the sun shining. It's pure and real, and we decide to recognize it or not. This becomes the difference while we're in creation and agreeing to the restrictions of these ideas that have been created by others, the devil-God idea, and everything that goes along with that, the doctrines and the systems of belief, etc., the religions that have been created. As people agree to these things, then they're agreeing to the restrictions of these so-called individuals that supposedly rule creation, when actually they don't. They don't actually rule. They proclaim themselves as rulers, but they don't actually rule, because they only have a position according to the agreement they have. You see? So when people stop agreeing to them, they don't have any rulership. It only appears as though they have rulership when they have supporters and agreement. So this is what we're providing to people, showing them what they're agreeing to. So it's very interesting in the world today. You have people protesting the system. Well, they've agreed to the system, and as they're protesting against the system, they don't see that they're still agreeing to the system, because they're looking to those individuals that have proclaimed themselves as rulers, gods, lords, presidents, kings, queens, etc., whatever title they've proclaimed themselves to be. People are looking to them, saying that, oh, we want you to change your ideas from this to that. Well, they're still agreeing to the deception. They're still supporting them. A better idea would be to where they look around and seeing what's going on with the natural environment and better understand what's taking place with that, and create their own communities to where things make sense instead of agreeing to the deception and control that they've always known. Does that kind of answer your question, Miss Kelsey? Do you have another one?
The next one would be nirvana and the end of life, and there's a lot of spiritual paths that lead there, and I'm pretty sure in the books there's someone named Braham. Could you talk maybe a little bit about that? A little bit more?
Okay, so the first of all, the nirvana and the spiritual paths that pertain to that again is like in the deep dark border. That's beyond the mind itself. That's where the individual is in the upper part of the etheric body or the etheric realm, beyond the mental gods of man, and into that area to where as they get into their intuitive sense and then they touch the deep dark border, it would appear that that is the end of life, because they really don't have the recognition to go through the deep dark border. In other words, it's recognizing the seventh level itself. And the Brahm idea, that's basically, that is one of the terms used by the gods of, I would say, India or whatever. You have Brahman, Shiva, Vishnu. You have, there are thousands and thousands of invented gods from the earth because of the the limited factor, and it really becomes a distortion, but we're very limited with the physical body here, with our understanding of things, so these things have been invented over the ages. But the Brahm idea is basically off the causal worlds. The Brahm gods are off the causal worlds. We have the astral worlds, which is basically Jat Naranjan, which is the brother of Kal Naranjan, who's on the mental worlds. He's the big god, the Lord God, and these were takeovers at one time. Even on these realms, these were takeovers in creation, just like here. We see a reflection of this in the physical sense, where we have the kings of the old days in the European sense, where they were battling each other and for the rights to take over kingdoms and build their castles, etc. And, as far as they could see, this is my land, etc. And they build their armies. Well, in these other realms or these other levels, these individuals also, at one point, these were takeovers, because as creation formulated itself, souls down here, unaware souls, they have attitudes, and life is not easy, so they've formulated these different places, just like we've created things on the earth. These areas already existed in creation, and they became more noticeable, you might say, of their existence. And through time and space, through eons and eons, we'll just use that idea, and it can be trillions and trillions of, we'll say, years as an idea, as a measuring point, that these things became so. So now we have these lords and rulers on many different levels, and of course, because of the limitations of the human body and mind, when the individual moves over to these other areas, just like here, the authorities show up and they tell people that, well, this is my kingdom, and you're to stay here and you're to support me. And just like if we're in the United States or some country, you have to, have a job, you have to pay taxes, you have to live somewhere, or you don't, or you live on the street. But if you want to be part of society, you have to contribute in some way. You have to be a supporter, and you have to obey the laws and the restrictions that have been made. This is understandable. Realistically, the birds that fly around, they don't have to. And we can be like the birds, or we can be like the human people and agree to the system. And so for the most part, people want to be comfortable, so they agree to the system. They agree to these ideas that have already been created, but what they don't remember is that they were actually at some point part of the creation of these ideas, and now they're living out the effects of the agreements with their own creations. We've all been part of this, and this is all okay. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. It's none of these things. It's simply a wake-up process to when we want to decide to wake up and become more aware and see beyond all this. So, what is happening in creation is a simulator. It's a test, you might say, kind of like in school. When you pass the test, okay, then you go on to the next thing. You get out of school, you graduate, etc. You get your diploma. That's the idea here. Well, in life, you learn to graduate yourself into a position where you're no longer restricted, and that is getting through, you might say, the eggshell of creation, breaking through it, and eventually recognizing what else there is, and standing with the reality of life, seeing how life itself works. And so when we get into that position and we're willing to be with life as life is, then we're okay. But as long as we decide to be something else or indifferent to what life is, because life is all okay, it's an isness, it already is okay, but it's really recognizing this. But as long as we resist recognizing it, or we don't want to recognize it, then we've actually agreed to cause and effect because we don't want to recognize how life is. So this is where we're at the mercy of these different ideas. This is where we can only get to as far as nirvana or the gods of man, etc. We will continually deal with restrictions until we wake up. Now, each lifetime becomes a huge challenge, and that is that right now, all life is here and now. And you and I and everyone are right here and now. You and I have this knowledge. Now, as long as we continue to recognize, what we're doing and what has taken place, then a continuous better recognition with using the new you, the real connection to the real universes and the real guidance takes place to the point that we will eventually totally recognize ourselves as free beings of real light, which we already are. And so again, going through the process of that recognition, just like we did in school, but in the meantime, we're dealing with these ideas. Now, if we, along our journey, decide to agree with some of the gods of man or these ideas, then we hold ourselves back in creation, and it's like, well, I've reached this area and I really like this area, so I agree to this. So, and it's usually some area in creation that's very nice, or you meet somebody or you have a relationship, or it's like all of a sudden, well, I like this idea and I agree to it, or I believe this. Well, then you hold yourself to that idea, and it's in creation. It's not in the real universes. And again, it's a matter of choice, but like you asked, Kelsey, those are on the various levels, and basically that's the causal. You have astral, causal, mental, and etheric, and the big one is their nirvana position, or the void, it's called. That's where people blank their mind, and they're able to do many times tricks that are seen here. They can levitate, they can make the body invisible, they can shape shift, they can do all these various things. And basically that's off the unconscious level, that's off the etheric level, which reflects into the other bodies. So they have opportunities others don't, but at the same time, they're still in cause and effect creation, even though they can do these things. And actually, many times, by the very fact they can do these things, they limit themselves. And this is where they become, they have the test to become white or black magicians, and still they're in creation. They're not out of creation, even though they can do these things. So it was really cool what Jesus did in the stories, that how he divided the fish, made the bread, walked on water. Those things are all great. People look for the miracles. But at the same time, he got himself in trouble with the lords of karma, because again, that's cause and effect, and he has to deal with what he created, because he was creating phenomena. He wasn't providing a real presentation. He wasn't providing real truth, which is the way out of creation altogether. So then you have to deal with cause and effect. So it gets into a lot more than just a simple explanation of believing in the gods or knowing about these certain areas. It gets into a whole lot more, and this is where many people want to be more psychic. They want to learn these abilities and tricks, but what they don't understand is they're getting themselves into situations that actually they will have to deal with the influence of the psychic forces and become very tap line and have to deal with that also. And most of these people don't make their way out of it for many, many lifetimes because they're dealing with cause and effect karma. So that's one position. So that gives you a little explanation of what's taking place.
Yeah, that's great. I can ask something else.
Go ahead.
Okay, what about science and science, unconscious agreement, and tap lining? Can you kind of go off that a little bit, or?
Yes. Yeah, science, again, and most things are unconscious agreement. We have a surface world here, like in the movie The Matrix with Keanu Reeves, as an example. We have the surface world, and through his experience in the movie, we're getting an objective view. All of a sudden, he's in a part of the world that's unconscious that people are not seeing. And most people are controlled through their unconscious. This is what they don't see. They're thinking that they're making their own decisions, but they're really not. The world controllers know how, the cabal or what have you, the one world order, they know how to control people unconsciously. So people are waking up at this conscious level, this one-dimensional level of what's going on, but unconsciously they're still not waking up. That becomes a bigger wake up. So again, things are considered in a one-dimensional area, and the tap lining we're talking about is in the unconscious level. It's mainly in the astral body because the reptilians live off the energy, the emotional energy of people, and so it can be good, bad, or indifferent. So you have the love idea, basically emotional. You have the love idea that's attachment to certain ideas here that are actually distortion. And as the individual is in love with these distortions, and they may not recognize this, say like religions or personalities or idols or the business world, etc., these are actually distortions, but in their mind they think, oh, this is all good and, this is how I survive or whatever. Well, you do, but at the same time, by the very fact that you agree to distortions, good, bad, or indifferent, or depressions, or anger, or sensationalism, or all these things, the reptilians are tap-lining people in their astral bodies, in their backs, and they're not consciously seeing it while they're in their dreams, while they're unaware of what's taking place. This is an unconscious level in the astral worlds that they're not seeing, and their energies are being sucked. And for the most part, they eventually come up with diseases and illnesses because as the energy level goes lower, and also they're being influenced to do certain things. If it's obsessive things with drugs or alcohol or sensations or what have you, the person is motivated in certain ways, is prompted through these tap lines to continue on because this is how the reptilians feed off of others. They use the energy because they themselves are struggling to survive. And this is through eons and yugas and untold centuries of what they've created for themselves. And so they've come to the point where they actually become like parasites. And because of what they've created for themselves, and they're at such a low level in life, and they can actually shapeshift. They've learned many tricks, and they have technology also, but at the same time, like in the movie Independence Day as an example with Will Smith, they also have these deformed bodies, is what they have because of what they've created with their technology and what they've discovered. These people are basically destroyers, and that's what they're doing to the earth. They're destroying the environment here. And people will ask the government whatever, and many of these people are reptilians and shapeshifters that are in the, they control the earth. They are many of the politicians and religious leaders we see, and they're actually reptilians. And it's kind of like asking a virus, okay, why are you creating this cancer? Why are you doing that? And the virus would answer, well, this is what I do. And this is what the reptilians do. People can ask the questions, well, why are you doing this? Why are you poisoning the earth? Why are you, controlling us and microwaving us? Because this is what they do. It's just that simple. It's not rhyme or reason. They have taught and educated the public to be reasonable and logical, but these are inventions that they use to control others. And so people ask the question, and as long as people ask the question, that shows that they're not aware of what's taking place.